Oh, whatever.
Okay, we're now live.
Live and
So our main agenda item this week is just to check in on our sprint. I think people made really good progress last week. I don't know if we can keep it up another week or not, but check in for blockers, things that, I mean, maybe we just all picked off the easiest issues. I definitely did that, a little bit of that. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right thing because I was in the middle of grading. Don't want people's grades to appear on YouTube. Okay. So before we get into it, like any general comments people have, any general impressions or thoughts or opinions on the sprint? I'm gonna start looking at. I'll pull up the milestone for the various repositories.
Yeah, I have a few blockers, so
Okay.
we can go through them quickly.
Well, let's get into blockers in a little bit, but just maybe the answer is no one has any general thoughts about it. Is my idea that like it feels like we're making overall good progress seem right to other folks?
I did not make much progress on actual issues, but yeah, struggling a bit those last few weeks.
You got that
so.
copy button, which I think we remember talking about like
button.
a year ago, and we finally got it actually in there. So that's great.
Yeah, I don't think it was on my official list of issues, but I did do an issue, so
it was an add-on.
that counts, sure.
Okay. Well, we could, so let's just give like a quick overview. So we are, for the assembly line weaver, we've finished, let's see, we have 15 open issues, but there's a pull request for one. Actually for two of them. Oh no, this is just not really an issue. This is the PR. So 14.
Yeah, sorry, I put the PR there.
Let's see, pretty even spread in terms of like who's working on what for the weaver. For the runtime code, we have about the same number of open issues, about 16 open issues, 2 that have pull requests for them. I think a lot of these are relatively small. And it looks like there's a spread of documentation type issues, investigation issues, things that may not be a huge blocker if like they're nice to haves in the sprint essentially, but they won't break if they take an extra week, but I think it's good to try to stick to the strictures of the sprint. But I'm pleased. I think we closed a lot of issues last week in both repositories. Added a couple of issues, which are mostly pretty small, but didn't seem to make sense to fix in the existing PRs. Does that add any other general impressions for people? And then we can go into blockers and think about whether there are issues that we should re-triage.
I think we made great progress, and there are probably a few issues that are already closed, but we haven't closed. Like I noticed I made comments, but I just want other people to comment on it to agree that it's actually closed. So that's why I didn't close.
Okay. Oh, because you had worked on this one, right? I think already. But we just hadn't linked it to the PR. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. So there might be some things that actually are fixed by an open PR. I'll have to double check this one because yeah, you had a PR for this. We'll just make sure that they're resolved. Well, Lily, since you had raised blockers, maybe we should start there with those issues that you have blockers on.
Okay, yeah, the first one is I made it's for issue 65. Let's see for the week.
And that must be for
No, for the 79.
Okay.
Issue 65, the download screen, where all the changes have been merged into main, but I think there was a little glitch.
You wanted to it was the wrong change, right?
Right.
Yeah. I can look at that. I just didn't have a chance yet to make it the right version. You wanted to use a different version of the send button, basically, right?
Just reverse I mean, my code, right? That's the new pull 155 one pull request. Basically, the code doesn't match the image that I have. I posted in issue log, but one thing
I will look at this. And since I merged the first one, I'll look at it. I just haven't had a chance to review it yet. That's all.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's very, very minor. But I do have a question associated with this, which is when I test my code, I didn't see I had a duplicate in the PY code. I'm just wondering why. I should see two of those things because the code says, okay, do two of them. But I didn't see it on the screen.
That is really weird. I don't know why that would be. The only thing I can think of is that it was like eaten up by some other unclosed tag.
Or by an error or something. That's definitely something to check out.
Yeah, it was just HTML. So it wouldn't have been like a JavaScript error, at least.
Right. No. It's just weird. I don't know if it has anything to do with how our server is set up or something, because even when in that new pull request, the first time I just deleted the top one, I didn't realize that I also pulled the new change that Quentin made. In other words, the lower part also removed. So when I just deleted the top one, that means I had nothing left. When I tested it, I still saw one. That's why I didn't notice until I really looked in GitHub, looked at the code. I said, oh, now I have nothing left. So I went back to the code and I added to the bottom one and made a second push. It was just so weird.
It sounds like it could have been a GitHub related issue then, because when you do a commit, it merges. So if you didn't have the latest version of the branch on your server, because I had made a few commits on the pull request, but if you hadn't pulled those into your server, when you commit, it does do a merge. It pulls in the branch and merges your changes with the changes in the branch. So a good habit is to like make a new project and pull in the branch, and then you'll have the latest changes. You won't have any of your commits that affect what goes into the pull request either. Because sometimes that happens. If you make a pull into an existing project, sometimes DocAssemble mixes up your commits with what you really had intended.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Good to know.
Another thing is just like when you just to do a pull and then you can see it without having the commit first. Probably that would have been enough in that situation to just do a pull. And that's probably my fault for making a change and not telling you that I made the change and reminding you to pull before you made future changes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that could also help. But anyway, so that's that. It's really a minor issue. So then the next one is the...
I was wondering if I could, unless we're staying on this PR, I noticed the send button in some of the images looks like it's on the next line. The last time that I got advice from a UX person, a UI person, they said the send button.
Before we talk, it's not actually on the next line in the actual PR. That was a draft, and it is no longer on that.
Yeah, the final version is this. For the desktop, it's the sender and the email is on the same line. For mobile, when there's not enough space, it does come to the next line.
Oh, okay.
So what I was told by the UI person was just to make the email field smaller, that they should stay on the same line.
I hadn't tested it on mobile. I think that is a good suggestion. Maybe the email address label on the line above, but the input and the send button next to each other.
That might also work.
Yeah, I mean, for now, let's just, I just let it go so we can maybe do another round to it.
Sure.
Maybe we can open up an issue for that.
And also maybe to see how people use it. I mean, do they experience any issue, or is it a visual thing, or is it a functionality thing?
I doubt we'll get anyone reporting anything, because they don't report those kind of, like, people usually just say, oh, I'm doing a bad job using the platform.
Yeah, but if it's functionality problem, they will experience issues.
It's not a functionality problem. It's a matter of user interface and what people have found is most clear in user interface. It's not a matter of whether it functions or not.
Yeah, I think there probably are features we can discuss, and there's some that we might move on to so we open an issue for it. So I think we could probably pin that for now, since it's not exactly a blocker. But well, so Lily, you mentioned another blocker. I just want to open the floor to see if there are other people who had blockers they wanted to discuss. It doesn't mean we can't discuss Lily's story. I just want to get a sense of timing to allocate.
Okay, it's 3:17.
And that sounds like it's on the Weaver, probably.
It's to add the neither option. Yeah, it's the Weaver. Okay. So go all the way to the bottom, where I have some questions about how to make changes in NL.
I think this is going to take a lot of investigation to make sure that it doesn't break anything. So I would look for everywhere that user role and user ask role are referenced in the question library, and make sure that your code works for the situations and the if statements that those contain. If that feels like it is something you'd like help with, I can help. I think I wrote a lot of those questions, but I know I don't have it all in my head when I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, then we can do that later.
Okay.
Then
I think the main thing here is the court question, which does feel like usually you don't care about a court if it's not a court-related form at all. But sometimes you might want to use the court UI selector potentially without it being a court-related case. Like maybe you have to mention something about a court, but the document's never filed in court. I'm not positive about that, actually. But the other thing that I think happens is that we have some logic, which you already found, which says it inserts user ask role if the person didn't choose a role. So you'd want to change that. But I think, did you already see that, Lily, and find that code? I feel like I saw that in one of the issue comments.
Form?
Yeah, that's what you're saying right here. Don't invoke user ask for role, user ask role. I think you're essentially right here. I just want to make sure we test it and cover all of the bases.
Okay.
I think the other thing that we should do, and it's related to an issue that I had put on my plate, is number 111. So number 111 is the reality that in some forms we don't care if someone's a respondent or a defendant, but in some forms we do. So I just want to make sure that when we have questions that reflect something based on the user role, and we do have that more specific question, that we're responsive, and we don't say like, are you the defendant or respondent? We just say, are you the defendant or are you the respondent? Something like that. That makes sense. I don't think that actually you have to think about that, Lily, but I just wanted to link them because they're connected.
Okay, good. Now, a related question to this issue is that for this issue, no, actually it's an earlier issue, but I saw Bruce added this new variable interview dependency choices, where it's default, which is defaulted to Massachusetts and Mass Access. I'm just thinking that where I made a change, I mean, now that we have this new questions, is it court related? If the answer is no, maybe I should hide that question and just set the default to be none of it, to be nothing. Or
you still need assembly line, even if it's not court related, right?
Yeah, you definitely need assembly line. I think you still want AL Massachusetts too, because it's this visual style of the form that it includes.
So don't touch it.
I think don't touch it in this PR for sure.
Okay.
In this issue.
Because
Right, so I think
AL
the scope of that's going to be bigger, right? At some point, it won't just change the dependencies of the package, but it will change which YAML files are included, right? That just isn't done yet.
Yeah. At some point, it'll change which are included and also like let people add their own. That's probably the bigger one, but yeah.
Okay, but yeah, like changing the includes could probably be the only thing we need for this sprint, I think, and that would be fine.
are they going to be always required now that you have to have something other than assembly line as
No.
well? Okay, sorry, because you said the default was the Massachusetts ones, and so I was wondering
You might not have
if
seen
it was
this feature.
if it was
I could-
able to. Okay, never mind.
Just,
I'll check it out later.
If you want, we could just quickly do a short form through it so you can see. Let me just find a file to do a quick test on so we can all see the same thing. Actually, this made me think, like, I'm starting to build a library of Weaver test files for which mostly require interactive testing, but I don't know if other people are too, but just think about whether we want to put those in the repository or not.
We should definitely do. We are now running tests, so like.
It could be the same as the automated test files. In other words, you're saying.
Yeah.
So I think it might be at the end. So it's this screen right here, Michelle. Which right now all it does is it adds the forms as a dependency on the package. So you can check none and it'll still work.
I see.
It'll just use the stock assembly line package in the scenario.
Got it.
And then
Is this
eventually-
something we want to implement before we actually make it an available feature to add people's own like custom ones? Because we're working with partners who will be going, well, I can't add mine, you know?
I think it's okay. I think the big thing this does is it lets them download a file from the Weaver that they can install without installing stuff they don't want. It's easier to add stuff than delete stuff in some ways. And then this also makes it so that if you do check those boxes and you're using that in your interview, that you can install the package and it will run out of the box, even if you didn't previously install the dependencies. I think that's the value of it.
Okay. I mean, all right.
Yeah, because before it
Otherwise,
wouldn't
people
run
get
out of
an
the
error
box.
when they run it, right?
Yeah, that was the main point of this fix. And I don't remember how the suggestion was made, but it was just like, yeah, we should at least let people choose before we start doing things essentially. So it just makes it a little less hidden, but it's going to be changed. Like this is not like this is in no way like this was like MVP. This is no way like what I think should be a good like thing. And I think, yeah, Michelle, you're right. We do need a way to like, have people add their own, but no one else has their own. Like I don't think we have another like an AL jurisdiction that people have made and are actively using. I know like maybe
Leo is close to having one, but it's not finished.
Yeah. But I don't think anyone's actually using it yet. So like it's not it's something that it definitely needs to be in, but I'm not in really a rush to do it right now.
Yeah, I mean, it would be like, you know, that it would allow a custom one is what the thing is. But sorry, I got a bit distracted. I think my original question was, it looks like what you're saying is without this, an assembly line interview cannot be run out of the box. And I'm asking whether it is worth exploring if we can change that so that
this is
you
what
can
this,
run it out of the box.
That's what this did. Essentially by out of the box.
Without these extra files. That is not needing these extra files.
Of the feature. So the other part of it is changing the included YAML files. So it's like two different ways to make sure it runs. One is don't check anything and it won't use anything external. And the other is if you do have them, which is the default for most people who are automating. I think our partner jurisdictions, they've already started their forms and they're probably not likely to start a new form for like a month or two. They're like doing two forms. So we're gonna have a bunch of people doing Massachusetts forms this summer.
Right. So I'm just checking my understanding here. I'm not arguing with any of that, just checking my understanding. If you click none of the above, the interview will run out of the box, correct?
It does not yet because it still has those separate includes, but that is the
but that's the eventual goal of none of the above. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, we don't add stuff. We're just removing stuff. Basically, is all is for right now. Yeah, that's why these are pre-checked.
There will need to be some replacement. Like I don't think if you click none of the above, like all courts just won't be there. Even if we have like add your own jurisdiction. Like if you have none, then there won't be an all courts, and so any of the court questions will likely just fail. And I don't think there's a way around that with just adding none. Like we'd have to force people to add their own.
Could we just do all court? Could we have a
question? But if it doesn't work, we should fix it. So we should make that part of the scope too.
We could add an all courts variable that's an empty array and then or list, whatever they are in Python. And then when people have their own, it'll overwrite ours, right?
Yeah, but an empty one still would likely cause errors down the line. The point is you need some court things sometime, right? For some of these questions. That's the thing is I don't like this just feels like some of the questions assume that there exists a court, at least one court, and that you can choose it.
So I don't think it uses all courts. That's the thing. It would use trial court still. And trial court's defined by a, why is this there? I don't understand.
Trial court is undefined.
I probably was thinking of the wrong variable name, but yeah, like there are court questions in here that use some list of courts that is defined by something.
So it gets defined by this placeholder question, which isn't really great, but it just lets you type in the name of the court.
I think
Okay.
what
Okay,
Bryce
okay,
is
okay.
talking
So
about
I was
is questions in assembly line basic questions, whatever we used, that's what you used to call it, basic questions. Like are there stock questions that use all courts?
no, I think that's what Quinn, but I forgot Quinn had done this of like there had been stock questions that use all courts, but Quinn made a replacement that if there isn't at all courts, it just will ask like you have to fill in everything about your trial court yourself, which is fine. That makes sense. Okay, I had forgotten that.
Yeah, it's not great, but it should work without. So we should make sure it does, and I think that's part of the scope for the sprint is to make sure you can run it without any of those things installed.
Cool.
Okay.
And what was that we just saw where it was trial court address? The variable name was trial court address?
I don't really know why. Oh, maybe just so I could use the fields. But it's not actually using it. I don't really know who added that or why. Could have been me, I guess.
Could have been done by
Obviously, it
anyone at
escaped.
any time.
Escaped notice.
Yeah,
I clearly
just looks
added
like
it,
it.
so I don't know why.
That's fair
Is it
enough.
you?
It's comforting to know that this doesn't only happen to me, so.
That
That's
is
happens every
because it's a place I wanted to be able to. Oh, that's right, because the address
new
autocomplete only
placeholder.
works if it's an object. That is why. So I don't know why I wasn't using the address fields method. Also feels like no one really likes this, but we have a bunch of things where placeholder code expects a court to have an address. So that seems like a bigger scope to like make it so you don't need the address of the court. Which is why I left this here, even though like probably no one really wants someone to type in the name and the address of the court by hand.
I mean, that's fine. It lets people go, oh, okay, I need to define those variables. But like, yeah, I'm not sure underscore address will, since that's not what the object.
You're misunderstanding what it does. So
okay.
It is just for this question, which is used to then create an AL court object.
Got it.
Right here is where the actual trial court variable is created. And it uses the variables that are gathered here.
All right. Maybe one of us can go in and just add a comment about what's going on there.
All right, I think we're really off track from
the
discussion that we're trying to have right now.
Can we go back to the question itself?
Well, maybe we can
I'm
make an
lost
issue
now.
to review that question another time so that we don't get too off track what we're doing now.
Well, keep in mind what we're talking about, which is to have something that works, but we don't think it's really great for anybody's real use. We want them to make their own list of database of courts. And so that is the case for Illinois and Louisiana, at least. The two jurisdictions we know will use this. They will have their own database of courts. They won't use this question. We just don't want it to not work out of the box. Is that the question that you were asking, Lily, when you said go back to the question?
Go back to the question. I just want to add a small comment and see if it was one.
Which question?
About the dependency.
About the dependencies.
Dependency choices.
This here.
Right. Okay. So here we're saying jurisdiction organizations. So do we want to say mass access is more about branding? Do we want to point that out or not?
So yeah, I feel like this is still like I mentioned very early in the game. I think that's a good point. I think probably a better version of this would be like select your jurisdiction, select your branding, and then you could have like either of none, and we have either some way to populate some choices or some way to add your own for either of those. Like essentially that's what those two checkboxes will become, is they'll become drop downs. We just don't have the actual way to get other.
Yeah, this is
I like
definitely
that
a
idea.
wonderful start.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. Because that is essentially what both of those will become.
Should we add that somewhere on the issue? Do you know what issue number it
I
is?
was just trying to find where that issue is to
Okay.
add all of these thoughts and comments.
Okay, I'll let you do that then. We don't have to, we have to do it here on the screen. But, okay. Other thoughts on this? I mean, I guess we didn't really talk about this as a group, so it's okay to dive into it. I think just the right scope for what everyone needs to weigh in on here. That's all. All right. Let's go back to our list of open issues. Any other blockers that someone wanted to raise, or should we dive into like going over the issues that we'll kind of pick out things that might need discussion that people didn't bring to the table already? Lily, you had raised an issue just a few minutes before our meeting about the
logo?
icon
that
we should use in mass in the assembly line repo.
Right. I said I can work on it if you have the image file, and you said okay, we need to discuss. Do we need a new image?
Yeah. Do we? So we could just use this not really nice icon that I used for the AL generic jurisdiction. Does anybody have any inspiration about that? Let me find this here. So this, I think, needs to be done. We shouldn't have anything depending on MA virtual court in assembly line. I think that is in scope for this sprint. Take all the references away from MA virtual court.
Okay.
One of our references is to the mass icon.png, which is just the icon you get on one of our mass access forms, which I'll just put that on the screen. Everyone knows what it is, but it's just this little, people think it's a hand, but it's actually the shape of Massachusetts.
Do we have an icon for assembly line?
We don't. On the AL generic jurisdiction interviews, there's like a weird.
Bruce, I saw you. I saw you.
It took me several seconds to realize how you meant it.
Yeah, it's like a hand.
That's the second point. Sorry, what were you saying, Quinn?
That's it. I was just going to say, like, I just Googled around and found an icon that looked like it was a form icon, but then the background's wrong. I didn't really try to refine it. If anybody thinks we should have a brand for assembly line out of the box, people will probably use our out of the box one in various situations if they use our package. Like, they might not.
How about a wrench on top of a piece of paper? Maybe I'll draw one out. See what you think.
Well, maybe it should be an icon that says something about assembly line. I mean, for the image of assembly line. You know?
Right, but that's why a wrench on top of a piece of paper. So we're like working on the insides and the gears and stuff of forms and form making. Maybe I'm not expressing my vision clearly.
I'm more thinking of some kind of like.
So there are
like
multiple.
Belt, you know the assembly line people work on it. That kind of image.
So I feel like there are
model.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I feel like there are multiple logos to think about. There's like, if we want an assembly line logo for us, but I still feel like the logo that shows up on people's like forms, which this is a default logo that will show up unless you override it in your jurisdiction or like branding packages. I feel like that one, I was going to say, I feel like that the generic jurisdiction one is good because it's not like we want our branding on other people's, like by default on other people's forms, which I guess we might, but it just seems like the wrong place to have it. And we could still also have an icon for like assembly line in general, but I feel like that would be more of like if we want to replace or put icons on like the the documentation pages and stuff like that. and maybe like in the GitHub repos themselves, on readmes and such. But this feels like not the right place to put like that sort of logo.
Sure. Good points.
Big
So
issue
we
with this
need-
icon
so we
is
need-
it's the wrong transparency.
So we need 2 logos. One is for the generic jurisdiction, and one is for assembly line in general.
Well, I guess I question if we really do need an assembly line logo. It could
won't
be
be
good
on
on our
forms.
documentation page.
Yeah, like Bryce was saying. That was my thought.
Well, we have a mass access logo already, right? So
Or do we want to have the same brand for assembly line? Is that our goal?
well, where will the brand appear is my question. So like, I think only on our web page, like our documentation type pages is where we would have a logo, a branding that would be visible.
Right. Is that a question, or is that what is going on?
I'm just checking to see if that's what you were thinking about, or if that matches what your understanding is of where we
Yep.
use it.
Yep.
So like relatively minor. Agreed.
I
doesn't
think
have to be a
we
priority
probably
right
aren't
now.
the right group to figure out that logo question, I guess, but this meeting
Okay.
is.
Good point.
But I think a placeholder logo that goes on new forms is something someone needs to do, and we can do it. But a logo for the whole project is a little bit different, I think. That conveys the brand identity of the assembly line. I mean, this was what I found. I think it's fine, except I don't like the weight of it, and I don't like that it's a transparent background, so it looks stupid on our actual pages.
Yeah, it
So-
will be drawn in a dark.
It would be easy to, it's easy to change the transparent background. I could do that in like a few minutes and post an example version on that issue.
Well, yeah, that's true, depending on what you have to edit it. Thought it
And
was,
we should
I thought
go
it was
through
an
this.
SVG. And PNG is a bit more complicated, but
Well, so I left the source there, and you could probably download it as an SVG too. So I guess if you, not sure how easy it is to find it from that identifier, but
First thing.
I was just trying to, I mean, anyway, like this would take like a minute or two to draw in something like Inkscape. Maybe it's not something where we want to find a logo that we have to give any attribution to at all, but it's very simple. That's like, it has to be in your source file. It doesn't have to be public, the attribution, which I think is helpful for people who are going to include our work into their work. Maybe we want to use a font awesome icon where we're covered in other ways. I don't think font awesome has any really good icons that represent a form, though. It's probably where I would have started.
do we want to set this as an issue for someone to do research with? And then,
Yeah, so that's actually where we are right now, is that Lily suggested that she would take it on, and I just wanted to get more input before she was like, what icon should I use? So I think it's worth us deciding that, because we can't move on. I think we can't just leave this as is, because it depends on MAVC. So people really they're going to have a broken image link otherwise, unless they install MAVC. That's why.
Sure, if you want to work on it, that's fine. You can work on it.
I'm so far not getting done what I have to get done, so I think probably it's better to not put me on more things.
Bryce, it sounded like you had interest in doing this. Is that right? In
I
trying to
am
just reformat
Actively
that?
editing it
Nice.
right now, so I
The
will
only thing
likely
is,
not
like-
do like a ton of research. That's the thing, is I don't really feel like it's necessary to do a ton of research. This is CC, I'm pretty sure, right? I guess I'll check that. As long as it's okay to use, then I will use this. I'm not going to spend a ton of time trying to find alternates.
Okay, I think
feels
it
like
is
the minimal
okay to
choice.
use, but you have to accept the license, is what I remember. So it's worth double checking that.
So you have to credit somewhere, etc. Do attribution.
I don't think it requires attribution. I think it just requires accepting the license term.
Okay.
So if there are other generic things that look like a form,
It does mention we cannot use the logo, cannot use that image as part of a logo. I don't know if like a stand-in logo is.
oh, it says you can't use it as part of a logo.
Yep, licensee may not use work as part of a logo, trademark, or service mark. And I don't know legally what a logo is.
It feels like it's a logo, even if you don't alter it at all.
Yeah. In that case, I can do some quick search and try and find some Creative Commons stuff.
Okay. Or, I mean, if we're just talking about something that looks like a box with lines on it, and we're okay with that, it's not, I mean, it's like a quick drawing, like I said, in something like Inkscape. But yeah, it is silly to get consumed by it. The other option that we have is just to use the mass icon for now and say, like, we're going to solve this by just moving over that image and not changing it at all. And that's all we have time for. So I'll leave it to you and Lily to decide.
Yeah, okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Anything else that people thought of that were like, hey, it's not my blocker, but I think we should talk about it? When they were looking through the issues that are in this milestone?
I created an issue about merge the preflight test and then make the weaver. I don't know if we have time to discuss it.
Let's put a pin on that for now because it's not in our milestone, but I think that's, well, I guess it's related to this one here, potentially. But yeah, let's mark that as a possible one. Any other ideas? We can jump to that one first. Let's see. So we've talked about this in circles a bit over time, different discussions about what the pre-flight checker is for and how to help people use it correctly. People have different uses for it, obviously. And then there's some use cases that are really easy for people to understand and some that are more advanced or more complicated, I guess. Lily, you really just want to talk about merging the pre-flight checker, but I think it really relates to the issue that was assigned to Michelle, which is to help people not download the PDF file if they're using the pre-flight checker. So we could talk about that first, maybe, which is, I think the issue there is, do people, in order to validate that their form is correct, do they need to be able to download the PDF and to see what it looks like with text in all of the inputs?
What's their current procedure?
Well, that is what we offer people right now. I don't know if everyone understands it, but when they run the pre-flight checker, let me just do that. Excellent. They get a download at the end of the PDF with all of the fields filled in. And one thing that happens right now is that people, I think it's mostly when people are trying to troubleshoot something else, but sometimes it's people just not reading the instructions or knowing what to do or understanding what this form is about. So if it's just, so if it's people who are just trying everything to see if something works, I'm not as worried about that. But if it's people who come here and don't understand what to do, it's a problem for us to solve, right? So I think what happens is a lot of time people get here, it's like, oh, this is the pre-flight checker. It gives me something to download. I'm going to download that and use that as the source of my form that I'm generating through the Weaver. So they take this, they download this file. It's a PDF. And they try to use it in their interview generation process.
Well, I can show you very quickly what it does in the merged version. And
okay.
You see, you can see.
Sure.
Sure. So here's the combination now.
Your input's a bit wider than mine.
It's an older version, so pay no attention to it. You use a lot of differences.
No, that's okay.
It's mainly about the flow. Let's see. If I load a PDF, it's going to run the test. So you get all that.
And what happens when you click on that?
And then here's, okay, it has validated. So then it just continues with the rest of the Weaver itself. So you keep asking, I mean, just go through the Weaver. But if I load it if I load a doc file, then there's nothing. I mean, it's just the Weaver part. It doesn't have the test.
Maybe if we open up that original issue, Quentin, we can look at kind of what you said there, because I think you had a response to that suggestion.
Can we see the PDF again, though? What happened? I think that's a good idea for us to do next. Can we see the PDF again? I just wanted to, I think it went a little too quickly for me to see what this behavior is here.
So here we load it, and now it calls the test.
So it still shows all the fields.
It shows all the fields. And
then it shows the PDF. And what happens when you click on that image? You can download it, but it doesn't do anything. You don't think you have to do anything with it because there's a next button, which actually loads it in.
Right, so it opens just like whatever my
Okay.
default is. But if I can continue, then it goes into the Weaver itself.
Okay.
I mean, the text we can revise the instructions here, but that's the idea.
Yeah, of course. Maybe something to think about is like actually an input they have to interact with to confirm what their next step is. It's one extra click, but if they said, confirm I want to automate the form now or something like that as an affirmative choice, then they wouldn't accidentally continue maybe as easily.
Okay.
In that scenario.
Though I think accidentally continuing doesn't have a high cost, right?
Well, if we think about who's using this validator, it's the people who are the newest to our project. So
I mean, we can somehow make it even stand more so that, then they realize they can always go back.
They could always go back, yeah. And they actually don't necessarily need to interact with this screen if there were no errors. And there's some errors we actually stop on now. We could rethink the presentation of that pre-flight thing. Right now, you have to understand it and interpret the whole thing. We could highlight the things that we think are problematic.
Right, exactly.
Not show everything.
And I'm thinking, if we're going in this direction to combine them all, maybe it's better that we can add an intro screen before this screen, where you clearly lay out what the weaver does, what's the first step, what's the second step. If you are only working on the labeling of the form, what you do. If you are doing both, what you do, all that kind of thing. Have an intro screen that lays out everything.
Actually, I do like that idea now, especially now that we have a page that has documentation of all of the field labeling stuff and everything. Okay, now Michelle suggested, thank you for sharing that. Michelle suggested looking back at the issue and looking at what our discussion was about it in the past.
I think it's not in this issue. There was an issue a while ago. Yes.
Not that one.
May have been that one. There was one where I said, no, it's not this one. It's the one where I said, let's make the pre-flight checker the start of the weaver. And then you had some.
I think this was it. I think we discussed it back in August last year. And then this was my summary of our discussion, I think. So I don't think I had thought of this in idea, even though I created the issue. I think it's just like we discussed it and this is the notes. If you can find a different issue, then we can look at that one too. I can remember the discussion though.
Okay.
I think it's basically this, which is thinking about how to clearly allow people to do different tasks on the project. I think that was the main reason to have two tools. I don't think we had thought about people using at this point, I don't think we had yet thought about how it interacts with people downloading the PDF at the end when they really shouldn't. So.
Okay. As long as all those previous concerns are taken care of, then.
Is that what you were remembering, or is there anything else, or you just wanted to find our notes to see if we had a discussion there?
I just wanted to find the notes because I don't remember. And I mean, like we've said before, not very useful to rehash the same stuff over. So I just find it easier if we have previous notes to use the previous notes. That's all.
Maybe it's this one. Oh, well, that was the whole issue. There's no discussion.
Yeah, it just comes back to this one.
Any thoughts? I mean, I think I articulated.
I've always been a fan, so I'm still a fan. Yeah. I like them being combined. I also think it gives the person who is going to be creating the form a chance to look over whatever the labeler has done, if that is a separate person. Kind of all of.
Okay, I think, yeah, I guess, yep. Lily, you also suggested this. Bryce, did you have any thoughts? I mean, you didn't get to be part of our discussion about this last year.
Sure.
No, but I feel like it does make sense for the pre-flight to be more integrated with the Weaver interview. Or at the very least, like what we have for the pre-flight can be just like at the very front, like the same. Like just it can like be the exact same if you upload a PDF. But just as you keep going, or like there's like a big like restart or like continue that either keeps you going or going too back. But yeah, no, I feel like it is useful, and it's mostly just, I feel like the biggest issue is it wouldn't be as big of a deal if DocAssemble had better ways of getting between interviews instead of just remembering which URL is which URL.
Oh, I don't know if anybody noticed, but I added a shortcut to the Weaver here.
Oh,
Oh, nice.
Was
Oh,
this like over
nice.
the weekend or something?
Did not
No, like a
notice.
couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say if it was like over the weekend. I haven't seen it yet, but I have actually seen it or noticed it for a few.
It just uses the description of the metadata title. So if, this isn't actually that great when it's a menu option, I think. So we might want to consider what we call it.
Mm-hmm. Does it not show up all the time? Oh, maybe it does.
I don't.
I guess it doesn't show up when you're in the interview.
No, it does. Oh, when you're in that interview, it doesn't show.
When you're in that interview, okay. Yeah, okay, that's maybe all it is.
That makes sense, I guess. You don't want to have a menu option to go to the thing you're already in.
Fair. Okay.
Right.
It's just minor.
All right, so I'm hearing like a couple of things here. So, and I think some of them should be a new issue. Some of them we could combine here. So I think we're going to say, I think I'm still ambivalent about combining it, but I think I'm convinced enough to say, let's do it. It will simplify things for people in some ways. And I think also we're not having as many people who are just jumping in, labeling a form and then leaving the project. Like they're sticking with the form they label. Okay, so we want to add, I like your idea, Lily, of having an interest ring. I wonder if that could be another.
Oh, okay. Wait. I just revised another issue that I created and to say add interest ring. Which
You created an issue for that already. Do you know what issue number it is?
Was this 367 or something? No, this is 367. Let's see. Just give me a second. Okay. Issues.
Okay, well, I'll put it.
Okay, 321.
Okay. And we're basically saying, I do think it's important to have a clear stop point so people don't keep going. To me, I think that's important, but so I'd like to try that at least.
I think one of the great things about Lily's version is that the stop point is not on the same page as that demo document.
Yeah, I think we're pretty clear about that part.
I mean, I was thinking we could write that down to have it be explicitly stated.
Could you rephrase that? I'm not sure if I understand what it would be writing down.
So the stop point would not be the
interview doesn't
pre-flight
end
checker would not end on the preview document that is created for the pre-flight checker.
I think that is a really good point, but I think once we combine them, that's automatic, right? I'm not sure how.
Well, you could have a question that says, are you just doing a pre-flight check? And then it would take them to a different endpoint. So like there are ways to make it look like the final page. And I'm saying that we just make sure that we don't make it look like a final page.
Or maybe we can add a red button. It says stop, and then it acts as if when you click stop or something, it goes to a help screen where it explains to you what it means? Does that work?
I actually have another idea here. Sorry, Lily, I didn't listen to your suggestion very clearly though. Sorry, can you say it again?
It's okay. I was thinking, right when you see the preview of the check of the PDF, before you continue, we add a red stop button where we can add some help context text to explain whatever we want them to understand.
I'm going to make another issue now just so I can link it. Okay, so what I'm thinking that we're going to do is just like keep this like pretty small, the changes first for just the merger, except adding that intro screen, I think makes sense to have here in this sprint as well. And then I think making the outro screen, that's a new thing. That is, I still think, part of resolving this issue to help people understand what to do next. But I don't think we have to change the text of the label debug information yet. I think that we could keep working on that over time, maybe in the sprint, but definitely a different issue. Does that make sense to people?
So just do item 2.
I think do item 2, item 1. Well, it's its own issue, you're right. Yeah, just do item 2, I guess. And then have item 4. I think that doesn't need its own issue. That's part of like combining it.
Okay.
Having an out point, which says like either stop here or keep going if you are doing the real thing. But I think my thought is a separate screen. You can try different UXs there. Okay, given that discussion that we just had, Michelle, what are your thoughts about whether how actionable this issue is and what steps we should take towards it that are different from combining it so it's not a separate step?
I think this would still be useful. I've seen people get things very confused. I think adding a watermark, if I ever figured that out, I haven't looked into it, so there's probably a way to do it in DocAssemble already, is like a really easy step that really lets people know this is not a document you should be using. And so why not add it in?
Okay.
I think I saw, if DocAssemble doesn't have it, then okay. That's what I thought. So.
I'll link the function.
Yeah, I think watermark.
That's great.
Sounds good. It's a good idea.
It's called overlay PDF. Yeah.
Let's see, what? Overlay, okay. For sure.
The other thing I was thinking of, and then I started to say it before Lily finished it, say what she was saying, is the fact that we're labeling the fields with the name of the label. Wonder if that makes people think they're meant to use that version of it.
I suspect that is part of it, yes.
But the benefit of having that be the text there is that you know what input you're looking at, so you know which one is wrong.
So I think the watermark might be enough, because you're not going to upload a file that has a watermark, right? You're not going to say this is the final file. If it says, you know, Weaver preview on it or something.
Could say Weaver preview, don't upload even.
I was gonna say, I feel like it would be more effective to
Weaver
change the
preview
file
do
name.
not use.
I don't know if I missed it. I was talking.
Oh,
Were you saying,
changing
Bryce?
the
Change
file
the-
name also sounds
I
great.
was gonna say changing the file name would be more useful because I feel I don't know why, but I just never actually like the docassemble preview of the PDFs is never very clear for me. And so like we could have some watermark, but it could like not be very clear from the little shrunk down preview. So
Sure.
Oh, I didn't think of that before. You're right. That's the even simplest change. Okay. Although, actually, it's not always easy to rename files in docassemble. So I guess you could use PDF concatenate. Simplest way.
Oh, you can't? I mean, oh, right, because it's already created.
If the file's already created, you can't just rename it.
Oh.
I think you could change the download. There's ways to change what file name the download has, but
We could change the download. Well, but then if they open it in a separate window.
yeah,
I don't know. You
I
all
think
let me
the
know what you
simplest way
come
might
up with.
just be concatenate for that. Okay, so we feel good about just those changes. I think I was starting to get excited about not having the label of the field in there, but then thinking about it, if someone really has to look at the document and see what's right, I think that could be really helpful for them to see, oh, that's the field I have to change.
Sure.
So if we're okay about those changes, also, I think, yes, people have done this, but it's like 3 or 4 people. So we don't want to overthink it probably either. And I think that the ones that stick out the most are the ones where people were having some specific problem with their file, and they were just trying things to see if they could solve the problem with their file. It wasn't their first go-to thing to do, to download the Weaver preview. Okay.
I had 2 students, or maybe 3, that did that, and it seemed that they just did it as they felt it was a matter of course, but it doesn't matter. I think this is good. I think these precautions will be good. And you're right. I think that the names have a use. They have a purpose.
Okay. All right. So think we're good. Do these 2 tasks fit inside this sprint? Lily, I think you're going to need to make a new project to do those. I know you had done some of the work already, but I think we'll need to make sure it fits with the current Weaver version. Given that, do you think it's something that we could fit in by next week?
Lily, you're muted if you're talking to us. Yeah, on mute.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yes, I think so. The work is done. I just need to translate the work into the new version of the Weaver.
Okay. All right, I'm going to assign you to this. Michelle, what about the watermarking scope? Does that feel clear, the changes we're planning to make there then? And does that...
I think it's already in the milestone.
Think about ordering these changes. Because right now yeah. What was your idea for how to merge these? Were you going to keep it a separate YAML file, copy and paste it into the assembly line .yml file?
Are you talking to me?
Lily, I guess.
Oh,
I'm just
sorry.
realizing like you might be editing 2 different files, right? So I'm trying to decide how we're going to accomplish.
I'll just do my changes after Lily finishes her changes.
Okay, that seems good. All right. So I'm going to add that note too. Defer until after. So let me see. We've got a couple of outstanding pull requests. Michelle, did you have any blockers on reviewing this one?
I think I'm viewing it right now. I only saw this morning that I was on this.
All right. So not clear yet if they're blockers, but okay, I just wanted to check.
I think it was looking fine when I was testing it.
Let's see. Any person who wants to take on reviewing this one? Sorry, Lily, I think it took a little while to get to it, but
I'm on a review streak today, so I can take a look.
right, I'll put Bryce on that one then. Let's just take a quick look now in our last 10 minutes at the issues that are open. And I know this is a little hard to do, but let's see. We've checked in on this one. I think the issues that I have, these two, I think I can do in this week. It feels pretty doable. We have 4 issues actually that aren't assigned. I'm going to assign myself to this one. And this one's really very closely related to that one. And this one I might defer, we'll see. Oh, okay, right. I'm not too worried about this one. Does this make sense to people? So there's something where like some attributes should only work for an index of a variable and not for the root object itself. It should work for users 0.
That makes sense.
Address.
Agreed.
That
Yeah,
makes
that's
sense is
definitely
the thing.
Anyone want to take this one on? I think it's a relatively simple one, but it's looking at the regexes in the, it's in the, I guess, get docx variables that we should be checking, I suppose.
would like to. I think I already have a lot of like some Weaver stuff that I might not even do. So
okay. Why don't I put myself on it, and I might defer it if there's not time. Last week was productive, but I mean I was procrastinating grading, so I might not be as productive this week. Let's see. Okay. So that was a key thing, I guess, is to assign those issues, but let's see. I don't think I need any discussion on mine. This one, I think there's already a pull request related to, right? I just have to make sure to close it. This one is same. Bryce, any discussion on your question, on your issues? They were actually just bugs.
There's no pull request linked to it. So if someone wants to link the pull request to it and close it automatically, but.
Yeah, Lily had mentioned wanting to review the issues that she wasn't sure about closing. So that's a,
or just to mention it in the issue so that it's linked. That's all. Mention it doesn't matter. Never mind. It is.
Do you want to add something, Lily, to that? We're not hearing you right now. It does look like you're talking, but we can't hear anything.
Ooh.
Oh, I still actually unfortunately can't hear you. Lily, your box is green for me, but
Oh,
I can hear you.
Okay. I noticed when I mentioned my issues in my push, it didn't close my issues automatically. I had to manually close.
You have to say closes number issue or fix or fixes number issue. It's like really GitHub has very specific wording to automatically close issues, and so I don't think it's that reliable. But
and it has to be in the body, in the comment, not just in the title. There's special cases where it can just be in the title, like if it's the commit message of the whole thing. But if it's not in a commit message, then it needs to be in the description, not in the title.
So
Oh, I
one
think
thing to keep in mind is like so I think here's what I'll suggest.
There's a link to it from
Look-
the documentation.
Look
There's a link
at
to the GitHub documentation.
hold on I think that's a good discussion point, but I think one thing is everyone please review the issues that are assigned to you this week. Choose a day to do that and look it over, and no one has more than like 5 to 10 issues, so look it over and close any that are assigned to you that are part of the sprint. We will also do this together a week from today, so I think how it's closed doesn't really matter, but we want it to be closed if it is resolved on Monday, which we could do Monday if people aren't sure and want to discuss it then too.
Yeah. Actually, I think a manual maybe it closed. It is not a bad idea because if I had a pull request that someone needs to review it and merge it, I have to wait until it's merged. Then I'm convinced it should be closed. But
right,
that is out of my control. So manual close, I think it's not too bad.
Here is where
things
the information is about it, like linked issues. So you could link them here too. That's one other place to do it. You don't have to use the description on the pull request when you created it. Okay, so that was assembly line Weaver. Well, still called Wizard. That's actually one of other things we said we were going to do and we didn't do. Maybe we should still talk about that. But let's look again at the milestone on the assembly line. So as we have this open, just like take one more glance, see if there's anything you wanted to highlight in our next 5 minutes.
Okay, issue 119. I think it should be closed.
Okay, you've resolved that. I think you're right. Okay, so for the footer element, I'm going to try to incorporate the feedback. I could have changed it to a draft, I guess, but I'm going to incorporate the feedback people gave on Friday live before I merge that. Nobody is assigned to this issue. Is that really meant to be part of this sprint?
I don't think it has to be. It's not a big audience. I don't think.
We discussed it, and I feel like everyone was like, yeah, this would be like a very good thing to have.
Okay.
I do feel like we bumped it back, but I'm not sure.
I couldn't remember if we moved it. Okay, well, let's leave it here for now. If someone is inspired to take it, it's not assigned to anybody right now. I don't want to assign it to myself at this point.
No, I think we better just push to next. So we just
do it now to push it to next. Okay. Other thoughts? Up, down, favor of deferring ish?
Unless it's just a matter of changing the label, then we can keep it.
I don't think it is, because I think we really need to make it work. So there's a lot of things that depend on the address, right? Like, so if you tried to geocode it and there were invalid values, you get really weird stuff.
No, in that case, I will say next.
Okay. We really have to change the output methods, I believe, to make it work. Some of these are kind of bugs, features that there's some documentation stuff, which is great. Okay, I think I'm gonna take this one, because I guess once I've merged the footer, we can change this language. Michelle, you have a bunch of stuff assigned to you. Does it feel like it's we haven't talked about these issues in your context to see if there's blockers you had, or if you still would like to work on them or need another person to help out?
I do not yet know,
Okay.
but I may not get them done. That is true.
Well,
try it.
yeah, if you would like another person's assistance,
Sure.
you might be able to get them done if that person knows in enough time. So just yeah, I know that's hard to do if you're like, if you don't have time to figure out if you can do it yet.
Yeah.
But if you do, you're like, I could either look at it today or tomorrow, but both work, then then earlier might be better to get another volunteer to work on it.
Good point.
Bryce, I have not started experimenting with your code about doing the bump version integration. Anything to say there that people should talk about here? I noticed you mentioned something about a secret for the teams.
Yeah, so essentially there's going to be, like, I don't even like looking at some of Michelle's stuff that like pushes to GitHub. I don't like I sort of assumed, because Docker Simple does so many things, that being able to push to PyPy and like actually commit playground stuff would work by default. It looks like we can get around the playground stuff, but I don't think there's an easy way to like in the playground push to Py, or like from an interview push another script to PyPy, or another package to PyPy. And so probably like if the full functionality of everything will only be in like the bash script. If it's worth it in that case to make an interview, if it's like you're gonna just want to, I don't know, if there's like, I feel like if there's just like two things, if it's like, okay, I need to like run this bash command and do things versus I need to do this interview and do another thing, you're just going to do the bash script most of the time, so it all gets done.
I mean, if the user is signed in, you might be able to get their GitHub.
There's no documented way to like push to PyPy, like API way to push to PyPy from an interview.
Oh, this is pushing to PyPy. I'm sorry.
No, yeah.
I
Sorry, your stuff
looks GitHub.
No, well, there's both, because you need to push to GitHub and then you need to push that updated GitHub package to PyPy. Which like we could push to GitHub and then pull it into a playground, but from there's no way to actually push it up to PyPy.
Could the push to GitHub initiate a push to PyPy in the like actions in an actions workflow in GitHub?
Maybe.
I mean, it can. I can tell you right now, it is probably capable of doing that.
Yeah, no, for sure it can. But this is more of like I think the purpose of the interview was so, as long as like we have like one config file that sits in a few like relatively important things that we'll need to update, like Massachusetts, Mass Access, Assembly Line, Weaver, and maybe like the appeals court stuff that we have to update and have a lot of other interviews depend on. And if there's like, the interview is so there's one place that you can update any of them. And if we have to add a bunch of extra like GitHub workflows to each of those individual repos that then push to PyPy, that feels not as useful. I guess it's still a one-time setup, but it's a relatively time-heavy one-time setup and very confusing to people who don't already understand GitHub.
Well, if you're already pushing to GitHub, you can push the action file to GitHub if it doesn't work. You can also do that. But I hear you.
Sounding to me like that.
Yeah,
maybe
the scope is growing.
Okay
the scope of this thing could grow a lot, and so I might just try and cut it off. There's a bash script. There will be probably two like secret variables you need. One that's like a Teams webhook that is a relatively simple way of like I can document probably in somewhere in like wherever I put the bash script finally how to actually get that. It was just straight up from like a like Stack Overflow and some of Microsoft's Teams stuff, and then like a secret for PyPy, and then we'll build and push to PyPy. And as long as I'll try and have some nice like fallback of like, oh, this isn't defined. Like you need to set up this webhook. Look here. Oh, like I can't push to PyPy. It's because you didn't set that up. Look here. And I'll do that. And you just run a bash script and those things will need to be installed. And I'll just try and document that as well as I can.
Yeah, I think that's fair because the number of people who will have to do it isn't that large.
Yeah.
It kind of democratizes what people need to get elevated to that permission level, but I think everyone who's currently going to be in charge of that could run something from bash. So
Cool.
Yeah, let's stick with that and keep it instead of going crazy with other stuff. All right, well, nice work, everybody. Like I said, I'm pleased with how the sprint's going. It seemed like it was a lot at first, but we've gotten through so much. I'm feeling pretty good about it, and let's keep up the good work. Just don't forget to check on your issues, close them, and we didn't have a separate documentation sprint, but Bryce, I think this feature, to the extent you could add some documentation to it, I think will be helpful. That's to get that in with the sprint too.
The one that you're on, or wait.
Not the one that I'm on. This is the wrong issue. The one about the bump version stuff.
Yes, yeah. Will do.
And which one is it here? Well, either way, whichever one it is. Sorry.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You know which one I mean. Okay. Feel free to use Teams for questions, but we'll see everybody later this week.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.